Welcome to Bards and Barrels, the podcast for Dungeons & Dragons players new and old. We're just a few 30-something dads who play D&D on the regular. I'm Ross Struess, and I'm joined by my friends and co-hosts Brett Miller and Phil Boone. We'll be exploring the world of Dungeons & Dragons in each episode, sharing our experiences, offering tips and advice for those who play and run this classic game. Don't miss out on us discussing everything from character creation to combat mechanics and even delving into some of the lore behind the game. We'll also be sharing some of our funniest and most memorable moments from our own D&D campaigns. So whether you're a new player just starting out or a seasoned veteran looking to reminisce about your own adventures or just get a new perspective on things, Bards and Barrels has something for everyone. So sit back, grab a drink, and join us as we roll for initiative and embark on this epic adventure.
Welcome back, listeners. This is Phil from Bards and Barrels, joined tonight by Ross and Brett.
Heyo.
Heyo.
We are coming at you tonight with another one of our class reviews. And what are we looking at tonight, boys?
The Barbarian.
Yes.
The bar-
Rage.
Give me the fury.
Well, and with that, give me your initial thoughts on a Barbarian.
A Barbarian is so much fun. It is your quintessential, like, D&D, I'm going to go in there and smash somebody's face.
And I think, Brett, you're the only one of us that has played a Barbarian, right?
I did. I have played a Mountain Dwarf Barbarian who is nicknamed Tubby.
Oh, yes.
He was a raging alcoholic who every time he would start to sober up, he would go into this furious rage. And he needed more alcohol.
And just shimmy up somebody's leg and beat the shit out of them.
and just beat everybody to a pulp. It's so much fun. A Barbarian is like, if you just want to smash and ask questions later, this is who you need to play. It is so much fun. It's a little light on some of the other features, which we'll touch on, but a great entry-level character or a class type.
I mean, really, it's a fighter on steroids is what it is. You get some cool other features that fighters don't get that allow you, if anything, to cause more damage. So if you want something, if you want to go simple but not so simple as like a fighter, then this is probably the class for you.
I think that it's one of the most tanky classes.
Oh, yes.
Because it can't necessarily do as much stack damage or, heavy melee damage, maybe as an advanced level fighter, but it can take more hits than
And you can't kill it.
No.
You end up with so many features later on as you level up that if you go down to 0, you can just pop back up. And there's so many different ways that you can do that same type of thing that a Barbarian is your damage soaking up all the damage coming in to protect the other characters in your party.
And I think the great thing is you can do that from the get-go. Like you don't need to level up to level 5 before you can do that. It's like they can start taking the hits right away level 1, whereas like a wizard is cowering in the back hoping they don't take a punch because they're going to go down if somebody beats them in the face once. So
I think that the Barbarian has like the highest hit dice in the game. So when you start out as a level 1 character, your HP is going to be higher than almost anyone else in your party.
Right, they get that D12, which is a huge benefit.
So I've been looking up some of the different pop culture references of different major barbarians that have shown up across different medium. I mean, the first and foremost is Conan the Barbarian. It's in his name.
Sure.
He's kind of the quintessential barbarian. But some of the other ones I've been finding recently in the newest Vox Machina, Grog. Grog is a very high level barbarian, especially at the end game. Ends up switching to a dual class, but primarily barbarian. Holga in the new D&D movie, and then another one, Hulk.
Oh,
that's true.
Hulk is one that he just epitomizes rage. When Hulk goes into rage, look out.
I feel like I've never really thought about it that way, but yeah, when you look at Hulk, it's very obvious when he rages and when he's not in rage.
Yep.
Especially early Avengers Hulk, where it's like he's not in control of his Hulk form. That's where his rage really overtakes his persona, and just that's all he's gonna do. He's Hulk smash.
Pre-Avengers Hulk.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, if you kind of like dive into that a little bit more and look at the quick build that the player's handbook sort of outlines, what do you guys see there?
Well, I mean, to no surprise, I mean you're gonna stack things in Constitution and Strength to start off. You're gonna be fairly low on intelligence. So if anybody's seen Vox Machina and you think of Grog, Grog is not the smartest character in the show. I'm sorry, but I keep thinking about the moment from season 2 where,
Yeah.
where he drops out of the body. Oh, good thing these titties were here.
I knew where you were going.
Ross's favorite
Can't
moment
think
of the entire series.
I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
think of Grog and not think of that line. Oh my god.
But if you're just an average player trying to get into a barbarian, I think you need another solid stat to play into the role playing in between all the combat. Because yes, your strength and your constitution does really well in all of those moments of battle, but in between all of those moments, what are you going to do?
I think you have to be careful with your dump stat because Brett's exactly right. You have to dump strength as number 1, right?
Yes.
Everything's got to go to strength because a lot of your rage,
Everything goes to
bonuses,
strength.
yeah, are based on your strength score, your strength attacks. And Constitution, if your strength's high and you're a melee fighter, you're probably a frontline fighter, right? So your Constitution's got to be high, so
Your
you've got a
tankiness.
high AC. Yeah. And if you use the unarmored defense that a barbarian has, you can have a pretty high AC without wearing any armor. So that Constitution score and actually your dex kind of comes into play there too with that. But I agree, you can't just tank all of your social skills, or else you kind of end up with a character that's not going to be that fun to play outside of combat.
Day to day, what are you going to do?
Right. What
Right.
happens if you end up with an entire 4-hour session discussing something with nobles, trying to convince them of something, and you literally don't get to swing your axe to any faces? Like, what do you do?
And I mean, yeah, you can pipe in and have some like dumbass comments, but over the long term, when you have an entire campaign, that's going to get kind of boring. It's fun for a little while. It's great for a short campaign or a one shot. But if you're doing a full campaign, you need a little depth to your character.
So in your guys' opinions, what's your dump stat then? Because I mean, you could make arguments for several things. Charisma is going to help you in conversations. Wisdom's going to help you in terms of insight. There's a lot of different ways you could go. So what do you think?
I think you could pick one and adapt your character to fit. So if you're dumping charisma or you're dumping wisdom, that's fine. But you got to have at least one other stat that you're leveling up or you're dumping some extra bonus into that can help out your role playing over the long term.
I think personally for me, I would end up dumping charisma, but instead of playing it like he's completely off-putting, he or she's completely off-putting, I would maybe just dump it into like their personal hygiene isn't great or something along that lines of
Sure.
the charisma track, to where maybe physically they're not the most appealing person, but they could still carry out socially. Because I think
Sure.
that intelligence and that wisdom is going to come in handy more in those conversations than charisma. And I will definitely think it depends on your party makeup.
Right.
Oh
'Cause
yeah.
if you already
Right.
have a bard or someone like that who's super charismatic, I can choose charisma as a dump stat and we'll be okay.
I would agree. I would dump charisma as well. But I would dump it for a different reason. I would dump it for the intimidation, if nothing else. Because when I think of a barbarian, I think of somebody that can really scare the crap out of people. So if you're charismatic and you can make those roles to intimidate people, makes perfect sense and stereotypically fits the barbarian type, especially if you're in a party where people are meeting those other stats.
I think that kind of leads us into, we've even touched on a few of these, I feel like, but pros and cons for new players wanting to get into a barbarian. Start with the pro side.
I mean, when you're jumping into an early level, a level 1, 2, 3 character, your barbarian is going to be able to jump in and beat the baddies right away, especially with some of the innate defenses that they get, being able to be resistant to different types of damage. Having that really early on in your character sheet is really important, because as you first get started in those level 1, 2, 3 characters, you're going to be going up against goblins, orcs, just little basic zombies, skeletons, things that are going to be doing your basic types of damage that a barbarian can really take and keep rolling with and kind of slough off a lot of that damage.
I think another pro is you get your rage at level 1. I mean, this is not a class where you're waiting until level 3 and beyond to pick things up. You're getting it right away, which allows you to not necessarily play this character fully, but you're doing their main thing right off the bat. And I think that's very appealing to a lot of first-time players, is jumping in and being able to do the cool things with a character.
I 100% agree. And I really think, too, that one of the advantages that a Barbarian brings to the table right off the bat is that they're proficient with all weapons. Simple and melee, so you can immediately add a proficiency bonus to your attack rolls. That's huge.
And if you've seen the D&D movie, you can reference Holga being able to grab a stone brick off of an alleyway and just beat people to a pulp with it, or just grab an axe when in the middle of a battle and just roll with it. You don't have to worry about if you're if you're proficient. Proficient with something. Doesn't matter if you're proficient or not in it. You can just grab a weapon that's sitting on the sideline and just roll with it.
I also think that starting wise, if you're just looking at the starting equipment that typically comes with the Barbarian in the basic rules or the player's handbook, they can start out with a great axe. It does 1d12 slashing damage. That's huge damage for a first level character.
Another thing that I've noticed is early on, you get reckless attack. So that is where you can attack recklessly. So it's giving you advantage on your melee attacks every single time when you're using strength. The downside of it is any attacks against you get an advantage against you. But if you're using that to finish off a baddie and just can go in there and do the finishing blow on something, hell yeah.
Sorry, I was in the middle of a beer drink there. So one of the other things that I appreciate about a Barbarian as well is that your major decision of your character arc happens at level 3. So it's not like you have to make it day 1, but you also don't have to sit there and wait until something like 5th level, right? At level 3, you're starting to hit paths. Do you guys have any other pros and cons before we switch into paths?
I would say there's definitely some cons. You're very limited on your role-playing ability. Like, it's not as wide open as some of the other classes where you can go a bunch of different ways. You're going to smash things. But how you can adapt that smashingness to have a little bit of substance behind it is important when you're starting to build a character.
And unlike the cleric, which we've talked about in previous episodes, if you want something with some magic to it, this is not the class to go with. Like, there's going to be some paths where you get some features that are magic-y, but if you're sticking to general rules player handbook, this is not going to be someplace where you can dabble in the magic that's available to you in Faerun.
One other thing is you're pretty much stuck to the ground. You can jump, you can leap, those types of things, but you're not going to be flying. You're not going to be doing a lot of ranged attacks. You're going to be mostly a melee combatant. And so that's going to be something that you're going to have to work around and adapt your character, especially further on into the higher levels.
That's what I had marked down as my number one con, is that this particular build typically is terrible at ranged combat. Unless you find some sort of an additional weapon you can pick up. But the biggest hurdle our Barbarian runs into is that typically ranged attacks are dexterity based, and a Barbarian is a strength based character.
Right. Which, stay tuned for a future episode on multi-classing, because we'll get there eventually as well.
And your range has to, if you're dealing with your rage, you also have to be using your melee attacks, which are strength based, in order to keep your rage.
Yeah.
So if you're attacking from range distance, your rage is going to elapse.
Yeah, rage doesn't apply to ranged attacks.
Right.
And that's ruining a major feature. Extra bonus damage for your character.
Yeah, I mean, it takes away your character's strength, literally.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, well, paths. So I think that the basic rules only present one path to new characters, and that is the path of the Berserker, I believe, is the one in the basic rules. Decent option?
I mean, I think so. I mean, it's basically a buff to things you can already do. So it's going to allow you to, it talks about like going into a frenzy, mindless rage, intimidating presence at different levels. Basically, it's turning things that would normally take actions into bonus actions and allowing you to do more on your turn, depending on what you're talking about. That's generally what it is. It's like I said, it's buffing things you can already do.
That's the character I was playing, Tubby, the Barbarian. He was a Path of the Berserker.
I think that it offers some huge action economy, right? Because immediately at 3rd level, you can start using a bonus action to make a melee weapon attack. Now, sure, you suffer a level of exhaustion, which can get you into a lot of trouble. But if you're careful about it and you maintain that, that's huge as far as 3rd level goes. Being able to take an extra attack on your turn.
To finish a character?
Well, and if you have a D12 weapon,
oh yeah,
you're doing
that's huge,
big damage.
You can wham bam kill off a character and then rest right after that.
Right, especially when 2 levels later, you're getting the 2 attacks on your attack action anyway, so
and still a bonus
action. Yeah,
exactly.
So you're getting lots of attacks with that D12. I mean,
right.
that is a big flipping deal. The mindless rage feature that you get in there is also interesting because, like, once you rage, you're not able to be charmed or frightened. So depending on enemies in the campaign you're in, there's certain situations that could come in really handy. And I believe the way it's set up would be like if you are charmed or frightened and you go into a rage, you drop that while you're in the rage. So it's like if for some reason your entire party becomes charmed or frightened for some reason, and then you have the ability to go into the rage, all of a sudden you're free to do that amount of damage that we were just talking about. And then eventually you're going to have to go back, and then at higher levels you can rage more often, things like that. So there's some really cool options in there with the Path of the Berserker for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think the other option then that the player's handbook opens up to you is the Path of the Totem Warrior, which is very different than the Path of the Berserker.
Oh yeah.
I think this one is like if you want a barbarian that's not necessarily smash. The Path of the Totem Warrior really gives you that spiritual connection, because at different levels you're creating like aspect of the beast, tometic attunement, where you're picking a specific animal and you're gaining abilities from that animal. And the cool thing is you never have to choose the same animal. So there's always 4, or 3. There's always 3: bear, eagle, wolf. And if you choose one at an early level, you don't necessarily have to choose that one later, which I think it gives you a little freedom to kind of mix and match and stuff in there, which is kind of cool.
I also felt like this is one that leans maybe into one of those magic-esque feels because of the boons that you're granted from those totems specifically. So if you're looking for a class that maybe has that feel, this is a path for you.
Mm-hmm.
What other paths are there in some of the other supplemental books?
Yeah, so some of the other supplemental books outside of the player's handbook and the basic rules, they've got the Path of the Ancestral Guardian, which kind of boils down to protection via old dead guys. Pretty cool. Another one is the Path of the Battle Rager, and this one is specific just to dwarves. I didn't feel like it actually opened up that many great possibilities, but if you're playing a dwarf, it's kind of cool. Battle Rager, I mean, it just sounds cool. We got the Path of the Beast, which I thought was actually super badass. So it almost opens up like a little bit of druidic pieces there. We got the Path of the Storm Herald, which gives you the ability to basically buff an entire party. Not until you get to 10th level, but it does have some pretty cool features there. There's the Path of the Zealot, which has some pretty cool high-level features. Once again, your lower-level features aren't that great. And then one last one is the Path of Wild Magic, and this is the most magic-esque path you can choose for Barbarian. And the wild magic effects are pretty neat there. It's similar to rolling like on the wild magic table as a sorcerer.
I would say a lot of the paths are really good. You can kind of pick any of the paths and kind of adapt it based on your character to fit what type of character you're going with. And it is just going to buff whatever you're doing and make it even better.
I think if anything, it adds something back to our pros list. Is like, if you've set yourself down a path while you're creating this character with like a specific background, there's unlike a lot of other classes, there's almost guaranteed to be a path that fits what you want to do with this character and whatever background you've already set out.
And we're just about out of time tonight. So what are your? God, I can't get this one out.
she said.
That's what she said.
And we're about 5 beers in tonight, so it's about time to wrap it up. What are your guys' final thoughts on the Barbarian?
This is a very approachable class for a brand new character. I mean, any first level characters that are jumping into a brand new party, this is one that you're probably going to have early on. Everybody should dabble into Barbarian once in a while, just because it's a kind of a palate cleanser to not have to worry about all these magic classes, the complexity of some of the other classes. This is a good one that where you can just jump in and roll with it.
I agree 100% with everything Brett just said. And I think going back to what we were just talking about, it lends itself well to, like, if you, whatever background you've chosen for your character, that there's paths for you to take, and it's a very versatile and adaptable character for you to run.
I think if you want to do combat, right, the Barbarian's for you. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bards and Barrels. Remember, you can listen to the show anywhere podcasts can be found. We're going to be dropping some bonus content over on our Facebook page very soon. So if you want to stay in the loop and not miss the latest from us, be sure to head over and give us a like and follow at www.facebook.com/Bards and Barrels. We'll see you soon.